Hello and welcome to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. Today's guest is Charlotte Davis, and I also have with me Dr. St. Lauren. Welcome to the show, guys. Now, the topic of our discussion today is something that's very serious, and it's something that plagues our society, and that topic is weight loss. We're actually talking about the various ways that you can lose weight, and the lap band, the sleeve, and there's other procedures. And that's what we're talking about today, because it's a huge problem with weight, especially in the city of Houston, from what I understand. I think our ratio is pretty high up there. And I know you know exactly what that is. Can you tell me what the ratio of in Houston is?
Our morbid obesity population is probably somewhere between about 15-20%. When you take all people into account, people who are overweight as well as obese, that number climbs significantly, probably much better than 35%.
Okay. Which means there are a lot of people that are going through this particular procedure now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
A lot of people undergoing the procedure in Houston.
Yes. And so you've been doing this for a number of years, I think 17 years now?
17 years.
Wow. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of lives change because of it.
Oh, absolutely. Every life changes.
Every life changes.
Every life changes, at least a little bit.
At least a little bit, yes,
Exactly.
yes. Now, Charlotte has actually had the surgery done.
Correct.
And can you describe what that was like for you?
Sure. I had the sleeve, what's known as the sleeve gastrectomy. So it's short, called it the sleeve. I had it about 4 years ago, and it changed my life dramatically. I had high blood pressure. Used to take 2 pills a day. Now I can take just 1 a day. The problem was that when I'd walk from down the hallway from where I teach, one end to the other end, I'd break out in a sweat. I was getting tired. I've always been active, and I was getting too tired. Blood pressure was steady rising. So what really did it was I went to a doctor's visit and stepped on the scale, and the scale said 269. And I said at that point I'll never get to 270, and told my doctor I needed some help. Talked to a girlfriend who had gastric bypass, and she shared with me her story and her success, and I decided that I wanted to have the same type of change in my life, and I knew that this was going to be a lifestyle change, and that's what made me go ahead and decide to do the surgery.
Okay. Now, what I wanted to ask you, Dr. St. Lauren, how does one decide who's a candidate for this type of surgery? What's the criteria for that?
Well, there's kind of 2 criteria. One that the insurance company will use, and then one that we use from a medical standpoint. Most insurances to be accepted and to have the surgery performed where they'll pay for the procedure, a patient has to have a minimum body mass index of 35. And body mass index is a reflection of your height and your weight. So
Okay.
it obviously varies from person to person. If your body mass index falls between 35 and 40, most insurances are going to require you to have at least one serious medical condition like high blood pressure or diabetes associated with it. If your body mass index falls above 40, then usually your weight alone is significant to be considered for surgery. So that would be the insurance requirement. We've operated on many patients with BMIs below 35. Unfortunately, again, insurance won't cover that, but those patients will finance that on their own, especially if the patient has a BMI of like 32, but they're suffering from diabetes or high blood pressure.
Okay.
They're still an excellent candidate for surgery, but unfortunately we can't use their insurance to pay for it.
Now, oftentimes, I think people have the misconception that once the surgery is done, it's like a fix-all. Like, once I get this done, I'm taken care of for life. I'll lose the weight. I'll get to the size I want to be. Now, can you dispel that belief for me?
Oh yeah, very easily. It's dispelled. This has to be a lifestyle change. What I like to tell my patients is about 10 to 15% of the surgery represents your weight loss. It really is the lifestyle change afterwards. Changing how you eat, what you eat, being more active. That in combination with a good follow-up program, patients can all do exceptionally well. But we do try to dispel that misconception right up front, because there are people who come in and they think they just get the surgery and then go back to doing what they were doing, eating bad food, sitting on the couch watching TV, and that the weight's just going to melt away. And certainly they'll lose some weight, but they're not going to lose successful weight. Most likely those patients will also gain that weight back. So it does require, as Ms. Davis said, a lifestyle change, and that in combination with surgery will make them very successful.
Okay. I know for myself personally, I always, before I had education about the process, I always thought that once you do that, then you're good. That the weight would come off and you would get to the size you want to be and you're good for life. I didn't know that you have to maintain certain things. And when I heard of I think it's the gastric bypass, is that the one where they actually cut the stomach and reduce the size of the stomach?
Well, with both the gastric bypass and the gastric sleeve, we are cutting on the stomach.
Okay.
With the gastric sleeve, we're actually removing a portion of the stomach, so there is stomach reduction.
Okay.
With the bypass, we are segmenting the upper part of the stomach and making a small pouch, but we don't physically remove any stomach. But both of them make a smaller capacity stomach so that we help control the volume of food that a patient eats, whether it
Okay.
be a bypass or a sleeve.
Okay. And that explains why I thought that it would just be a magic pill. Because of the reduction of the stomach, your appetite wouldn't be so big, or you would get full quicker, as I thought. So I thought that would fix it all.
Well, I mean, that's a correct assumption. This is what I tell patients. What surgery does is it changes the volume or the amount of food you're capable of eating. To a certain extent, will control the amount of hunger you experience.
Okay.
But there's a lot of other factors that play a role in your weight. Your age, your gender, the type of food you eat,
Okay.
how often you eat, do you exercise or are you sedentary, underlying medical problems. All of those also play a role in where your weight is at. If it was only just the amount of food you ate, then we'd cure everybody, because surgery does control the volume of food you eat. But it takes more than that. It takes education and helping that patient change their lifestyle in the postoperative period, and that accompanied with the surgery will oftentimes make them very successful.
Okay. Okay. Charlotte, I want to ask you, since you've lost the weight, and now you went from 269 to
I lost 102 pounds.
102 pounds. Wow. That
I was a size 24 and now I'm 14.
Excellent.
From size 24 to 14. That's quite an accomplishment. I want to ask you, how has your life changed since you've lost the weight?
Well, it changed, number one, exercise. I joined 24-Hour Fitness, joined the gym.
Okay.
So I go to the gym, make sure I work out and maintain that. If I start slacking, then I make sure I get back, because you can tell when you've gained a few pounds. My eating habits change. I eat a lot more grilled foods. One thing I've learned, though, when you go out in restaurants, all the restaurants don't have kid plates. So I either waste a lot of food or I eat on it for 2 or 3 days if I bring it home. But it's okay. You know, my favorite seafood restaurant, I used to eat the entire seafood plate. Now I share with my mom and my daughter,
Okay.
because I could only eat maybe one piece of fish and one shrimp or one stuffed this, or but my eating habits changed. I also discovered that, which a lot of people didn't know, and I read in an article, you know, overeating is an addiction.
Okay.
And often when people lose weight and they have the surgeries, they pick up other addictions. And so I read where we're drinking excessively because you can't eat a lot. So
Okay.
then you choose to have a drink, whether it be, you know, soda or an alcoholic beverage. Sometimes people pick up other addictions. But like frozen drinks, margaritas, can't drink those because they're going to fill your stomach up. You have no room. When I had the sleeve, the doctor tell you they took out part of the stomach, and so it becomes like the size of a banana,
Okay.
approximately. So I don't have room. When I go out to dinner, it's often a choice of what I want to eat. I'm going to get something small if I decide to have a beverage, because I can't do both.
Okay.
You know, it has to be a small amount of food. So it changed my eating habits. It changed what I order on the menu, as opposed to the fried foods. You know, I now eat grilled foods, salads, things of that nature. So it changed my whole lifestyle and my whole way of thinking.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. It's so funny because once you change one thing, it kind of triggers other things to change in your life.
Correct.
You know, so not only do you change your eating habits, but then you have to change your clothes
Mhm.
because you're going to have to buy a new wardrobe. And I'm sure that's pretty exciting for most women. They look
Yes, it
forward
is.
to buying more clothes, shoes, etc., and all this type of stuff. I'm having a good time talking to you guys, and we're educating our public, which is what we're here to do. We're going to be back in just a moment. You guys stick around. We're going to be back with more of this show in just a moment. Hello and welcome back to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. Thank you guys for joining us. I have with me today Dr. Saint Laurent and Charlotte Davis. Now, when we left off, we were discussing the procedure of the lap band and sleeve type surgery for weight loss. And Charlotte, I want to ask you, How has your dating life changed since this year?
Well, my dating life has changed. It's increased. The difference, though, what I choose, there were any gentleman that knew me before when I was 102 pounds heavier. If they approach me now and didn't approach me then they can keep going. If it's somebody new, then that's fine, and I share my story. That's important. I like people to know because someone shared their story with me. If they hadn't shared their success with me, then I wouldn't have, had the procedure. And since then, I've shared it, and I've had 5 other friends have the surgery as well, and they're doing quite well themselves.
Yeah.
So, dating life is quite interesting.
Yeah. You know what? And I'm really glad that you're sharing your story, because a lot of times when you share your story, you're helping other people.
Right.
And I think to myself, what is life if we can't help somebody?
Right.
And that's why I wanted to do this show today, because I wanted people to be helped by it. And I want to make a difference in the lives of others that see it and get to hear your stories and go, oh, you know what? Maybe that's going to be a good thing for me. Now, we were talking about different ways of different procedures, rather, as it relates to this particular process. Now, we have a model here. Now, I want you to show me, Dr. St. Laurent, exactly how the sleeve works.
Okay. Well, this particular procedure right here would be the gastric band or the
The
lap
gastric
band.
band.
Okay. And with the lap band, we place a little silicone band that's adjustable around the upper part of the stomach. So this is actually using a medical mechanical device to help control the volume of food you eat. When we actually do a sleeve, obviously we're not using the band, so I'll just kind of represent it by removing this real quick.
Okay.
But what we're doing actually when we perform a sleeve is we are actually removing about 70% of the lateral stomach right here. So physically we're removing about that much stomach.
Wow.
What that does is it creates obviously a much smaller gastric pouch or gastric capacity.
Okay.
But the normal digestion is still intact. You still swallow food, it goes through the esophagus, through the stomach, and through the small intestine. We don't bypass the intestine.
Okay.
We're physically making the stomach smaller. Now this does differ from the gastric band, and not only does it provide a level of restriction, but by removing this portion of your stomach right here, we're reducing a hormone in your body called ghrelin.
Okay.
And ghrelin is one of the hormones in our body that stimulates hunger. So by reducing ghrelin levels by more than 50%, our patients who undergo a sleeve not only have good control of the volume, but they have good control of the amount of hunger they experience.
Okay.
So they're not hungry throughout the day like they were before. By having that hormonal change, it also provides a metabolic effect. And that's why we see patients who undergo both sleeves and bypasses, they do better when it comes to weight loss and resolution of comorbidities such as diabetes and high blood pressure. Bands can do well, but bands really are probably a much better suited procedure for somebody who only has a smaller amount of weight to lose, maybe 40, 50 pounds. Well, we've certainly done patients who are larger, but we find better success the more weight you are with what we call our fixed procedures, either the gastric sleeve or the gastric bypass.
Right, right. Now, how do you determine what patient should receive what procedure?
That's a really good question. We try to individualize it for the patient. A lot of times patients have talked to other patients who've been successful, so they want to have that procedure, so they already have that fixed in their mind.
Right.
Some patients come to our office or our seminars really just wanting weight loss and not knowing what procedures are available. So we have to look at all factors, what their age is, how much weight they need to lose, what are their underlying medical problems, and really kind of what their lifestyle is. And then we kind of individualize it for the patient. Eventually, it is the patient's decision.
Ultimately.
If I had a patient who came in who, let's say, is 500 pounds, I certainly would not encourage him getting a gastric band. But certainly if he insisted, I'd go over all potential complications, risk, what kind of success we'd expect. And as long as he was well-informed and knowledgeable and knew what to expect, then eventually you've got to give the patient what they desire.
What they want.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I understand with one particular procedure, it's less evasive.
Correct.
And that procedure is?
Well, it's actually the band.
The band.
The band is the least invasive surgical procedure because when we do this procedure, we're not cutting, stapling, removing, or rerouting anything.
Right.
We're physically just taking a band
And minimizing.
and placing it around the upper part of the stomach. And by doing that, we create a very small capacity stomach above the band. And we can vary the level of restriction that this band provides by adding fluid to it, which is typically saline, by making the opening smaller when we add that saline. So when we make that opening smaller, then food stays in this upper stomach for a longer period of time. So this by far is the least invasive surgical approach we have. Again, no cutting, no stapling. When you look at the sleeve, it's kind of the next most invasive. With the sleeve, There's no rerouting of the intestinal tract, but we are reducing the physical capacity of the stomach by cutting and removing this lower part of the stomach here. So that is physically removed from the patient's body to reduce that hormone that I spoke about earlier.
Gotcha.
With the gastric bypass, it's a little bit different than the other two, and it is much more invasive. With that procedure, we are physically dividing the stomach, but also rerouting the intestinal tract.
Okay.
We are then bypassing the first part of the stomach and small intestine to bring food further down the intestinal tract so that there is malabsorption associated with that procedure. There's good restriction because we make a small pouch with
But
that.
malabsorption.
But there's also malabsorption involved with that program.
There's always a good and a bad, a
Well,
yin and a yang to things most times.
Absolutely. I mean, all procedures carry potential risks, and with the bypass, because we are bypassing part of the intestinal tract, there can be some malabsorptive issues. Most patients, if they take their supplementation, meaning their vitamins and minerals, they don't have much of a problem, but they certainly could get into problems if they weren't supplementing. We do recommend supplementation for all of our patients, band, bypass, or sleeve. We want them to take good multivitamins and some calcium every day, and generally that keeps them out of trouble long term.
Okay, that's smart. All right. Hey, we got a question from the audience. What is that question?
My question is, as far as your sugar intake, I do know that with some of the surgeries, you have to watch your sugar intake. With gastric, I know no sugar, you're totally sick. But with the sleeve, do you have the same reaction as far as?
No,
No.
I haven't had any reaction with sugars.
Oh, okay.
I can still eat everything that I could eat before except for bread. Bread gets stuck. It's hard to digest. And that or greasy foods. If it's greasy, then that's going to make me sick. But otherwise, I have no other restrictions. And what's really important for ladies to know, all the ladies that have had the surgery have had hair loss. So that's why we have to take supplements. So that's important. I definitely want to share that. And then my hair, it wasn't a lot. I wasn't bald-headed. But, some hair did come out, and I took biotin, and it, came back healthy.
Okay, great, thanks. Hey, I'm excited about this show. I know you guys are too. And we're going to be back in just a moment so you can learn more about this particular procedure.
Sky Trues Custom Eyewear has taken the world by storm. In only 8 months, Sky Trues has gained the eyes of many, including celebs like Big Sean, Little Flip, Destiny's Child, Soulja Boy, just to name a few. Through custom design, Sky Trues can put your imagination on your frames. I bring to you the next big thing in Houston, Sky Trues, created by Golden Boy, the musician, the artist, the entrepreneur, and grassroots marketing genius. Be inspired. Sky Trues, custom designed frames. Sky Trues!
Hello and welcome back to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. My guest today is Dr. St. Laurent and Vanessa Dijon. Welcome back to the show. And Vanessa, welcome to the show. As you guys know, we're talking about various procedures for weight loss and things of that nature. And my guests today are actually people that have had that type of procedure done. Vanessa actually had the gastric bypass done for weight loss. Now, Dr. St. Laurent, the gastric bypass is different than the sleeve. Can you explain what that variation is for the audience?
The gastric bypass is also considered a stapled or a fixed procedure, but with that procedure, how it differs from the sleeve is that we are rerouting the intestinal tract. What we do is we make a very small stomach by dividing it up here at the upper part, and then when we reconnect it, we reconnect this part of the stomach lower down to the intestinal tract. So when a person now eats, it will bypass the majority of the stomach and the first part of the intestinal tract, and meet up with the enzymes further down the tract. So we're actually decreasing the length of the actual intestinal tract, so it leaves it less time to absorb all the calories and even potentially some of the nutrients.
Okay, and then that's where the supplements come in.
Correct. You should supplement all bariatric patients, but it's very important with bypass because there is malabsorption associated with that procedure, that they are taking supplements every day so they don't become deficient. The bypass certainly is a little bit more invasive of a procedure. And it definitely takes a little bit longer time than either the sleeve or the band, but patients can be exceptionally successful. Really, we still consider the bypass the gold standard in this country. Most all of the bariatric procedures, success-wise, are compared to the bypass, because it's really been around for the longest.
Okay, okay. Now, I know that some people from this particular procedure have actually passed away, have actually died. We've actually lost people because of the procedure. What are some of the dangers involved in getting the gastric?
Well, any patient who's morbidly obese with underlying medical problems is going to be a risk for any type of surgery, whether it's a bariatric procedure or even have a gallbladder or a hernia. So you have to understand obese patients with underlying medical problems are always going to pose a greater risk because of those underlying medical problems. These operations in experienced hands are very safe operations. I generally tell my patients, whether it's a band, a bypass, or a sleeve, that operation is as safe in my hands as them undergoing a gallbladder by a regular general surgeon. So it really depends how well the surgeon is trained and experienced, but they can be safe operations. Just like with any operation, there are risks. We are operating inside the abdominal cavity. We are doing this laparoscopically, but there's certainly a risk of them having anesthetic complications. There could be injury to structures where we're working around during the procedure, such as the liver, the stomach, the spleen, the intestinal tract. Bleeding can be a factor.
Okay.
If we're making new connections, like with the gastric bypass, you can get narrowing of those connections or obstruction.
Okay.
You can certainly sometimes develop internal hernias with gastric bypasses, malabsorption of food and nutrients. With bands, those patients can get food actually mechanically stuck in the band where fluid has to be removed so that they can digest again. So those are some of the things that can occur. I think, you know, for those individuals who are wanting to undergo bariatric surgery in the future, the first thing you should do is a lot of research. Look at who your doctor is, what kind of experience they have, what kind of aftercare program that they provide. Yeah. This is not a fly-by-night type of surgery. You want to invest in your surgeon, and your surgeon should invest in you. Lifelong. Okay? You really should be with a surgeon who's committed to seeing you for the rest of your life so they can help you keep the weight off. Because everybody stumbles a little bit. Just because you had a bariatric procedure doesn't mean you can't gain weight.
Right.
Oftentimes patients with bariatric procedures do gain some weight, but by continuing to follow their surgeon closely, that surgeon can help them maintain the weight, and if they do gain, help them lose. If you stop seeing your surgeon, most of the time they come back 5 years later, they've gained 50, 60 pounds, and then it's very, very difficult for us to get that weight off without potentially revising the actual procedure.
Okay.
So I think key ingredients are look at your surgeon, the amount of experience they have. You can look at their complication rates, their death rates, how many of these cases they've done. Probably the most important thing I would look at a physician is what kind of aftercare that they're going to provide for that patient.
Okay.
Because here's the biggest risk of patients regaining weight. Stop seeing your surgeon. And I will promise and guarantee you at some point you're going to start gaining weight back. I think as long as the patient is continuing to see their physician lifelong, then most likely they're going to maintain the majority of weight that they do lose.
Okay. Now, see, and that's something that I didn't know. I didn't know that you would be a lifelong process. You know, I'm one of the people that didn't know a lot about it. I'm actually learning a lot by having this show today from you guys that are so well educated about it. But what I didn't realize was that it was a maintenance thing for life. So once you get the surgery, you have to continue to be in touch with your surgeon throughout the rest of your life. I want to talk a little bit more to you, Vanessa, because you've actually had a revision.
Yes, I had a revision.
And that's when they actually go back in and do something.
They made my pouch smaller. I had gastric bypass, so they've made it smaller. And with doing that, it's the same surgery, but again, they just made the pouch smaller because prior to my first surgery that I had, the pouch was larger with the hole, your hole that they have right here. It wasn't small enough, so I gained weight.
Okay.
During that process when I first had my surgery.
Wow, as opposed to losing weight, the opposite actually took place.
Well, I lost.
You did lose?
I did lose. However, I regained.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, is that a common situation that occurs with these types of procedures?
Well, you know, again, it depends in the context. You know, I think if a patient undergoes a good surgery by a qualified professional and they continue to get followed up, then this is kind of an unusual thing to see happen, believe it or not.
Okay.
I would say the highest risk of a patient regaining weight is that at some point in their life they stop seeing their surgeon, they've kind of fallen back to some old eating habits, exercise habits, sedentary lifestyle, fast food. Sometimes they stretch the pouch, and then without that appropriate follow-up, they're going to gain some weight. In her situation, it was probably more of a technical error on the first surgeon, leaving her with too large of a gastric pouch. So there are some technical aspects of all these procedures that they do need to be performed well so that they have good long-term maintenance of weight loss. If her initial surgery, the pouch was made too large, you certainly will see these patients lose good weight, but then further down the line, they have a tendency to regain the weight. So in her case, her second surgery went back and actually reduced the pouch to a more appropriate size, and now she's able to start losing weight again.
Okay.
So revisions can occur, no matter if it's a band, a sleeve, or even a bypass. The good news for patients is, if you fail weight loss or you're having difficulty with your current procedure, oftentimes there's going to be a revisional procedure that we can provide that can help those patients start losing weight again and get back on track again.
Gotcha. Vanessa, I want to ask you, since the second, or the revision, should we say, has it made a big difference? Have you noticed a lot of change?
Yes. I've noticed about a 30-pound change.
Wow, a 30-pound change. Wow. And how long has it been now?
Let's see, I had it on the 28th of April.
That's really good.
Oh, wow.
Yes. The
Well,
28th of
April as in just like past
Just
April?
This year.
Wow, that is fantastic. And you've lost 20?
No, 30.
30.
A total of 30 pounds.
A total of 30 pounds.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yes.
So tell me, what does it feel like for you?
Well, it feels really good. As far as the weight, I'm back to doing what I used to do. I've always exercised, so that really was not a problem. It was the weight when I gained it. It just made me sluggish, and really, I really didn't want to do anything.
Okay.
It was like, okay, I've gained this weight. I'm just gonna sit here and just. I do have to say though, with the new weight loss that I have, it's like new life has been breathed back into me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's like you're getting up. I walk every other day. I do aerobics at my house with my cable channel. Back to my swing out lessons that I take, back dancing.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like new life.
And that's what you want to happen. I think that's
Yes.
great. And we're going to talk more about Dr. St. Laurent and Vanessa Dijon when we come back in just a moment. You guys stick around. All right, welcome back to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show, where my guest is Dr. St. Laurent and Vanessa Dijon. Now, Vanessa, when we left off, we were talking about, of course, your surgery. And what has been the greatest benefit for you?
The greatest benefit really is actually the weight coming off. That I really have to honestly say that. It's the weight coming off and me being able to actually start back exercising and do what I used to do.
Yeah. Has it affected your self-esteem at all?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up because I want to touch on that topic. They seem to feel that because if you are an overweight person, that you have low self-esteem, and that is so not true. Not true at all. By me losing my weight that I've lost, it really hasn't done anything for my self-esteem because I've never had a problem with my self-esteem.
You always knew you look good.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. I've always been an attractive woman. Even at 301, I was still a very attractive woman. So that misconception about your self-esteem, oh, you have low self-esteem, that's not true. And that's a big misconception.
And I'm glad you've dispelled that misconception. And I think it's actually based on the individual person.
Yes, it is.
And
really
so
is.
you just happen to be a person that had good self-esteem, whether you were 102, 300.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. And I think that says a lot about you. I've certainly experienced other people who have not had that type of response.
Oh.
It's been quite the opposite, but it's good that you've actually had that response. I want to ask you too, Dr. St. Laurent, what role does the mind play in what this procedure does?
It plays a big role. I mean, psychological factors can have a significant impact on our eating behavior. If you really think about it, getting a divorce, breaking up from a girlfriend, losing your job, losing your house, these all change our eating behavior. And eating behavior is a big part of why patients do become morbidly obese. It's not just simply overeating. There are genetic factors, gender factors, age factors, hormonal factors, but psychological factors also play a role, and they do change your eating habits. You know, if someone loses a job, they may not be able to go and have a normal meal that they can purchase at the store, so they go to a fast food restaurant more frequently because it's cheaper, and unfortunately the cheaper food is generally going to make you gain weight. So, you know, psychological factors have a very significant role. I mean, I really like what you had to say. I don't think it's safe to assume just because you're overweight that you have a self-esteem issue. Certainly there are some who do, but I think that's the impression of people, is that just because you're obese you have no self-esteem, and that's not the case. A lot of these people already have vibrant lives, but they want their health back. I want to feel better so I can run with my kids, or you know, I want my high blood pressure to go away or improve, or I want my diabetes to go away. There are health reasons to have these operations, not just losing the weight, but becoming healthier and more productive. So I really loved what you had to say, because I don't think that's necessarily the case. Self-esteem can play a role, but we see a lot of patients that are just like her, who've got a great personality and a good outlook on life. They're confident about themselves, but they want to be healthier. And I think that's a great thing.
Right. All right. And now I want to ask you also, now I've seen people that have, I want to get to this question, but we have limited time right now. We have a question, I'm going to come back to where I was going, but we have a question from the audience. I think that was Charlotte. What is your question, Charlotte?
My question is for Vanessa. When you said that you gained weight back, did your eating habits change, or was that the reason, was that part of the reason besides the whole not being small enough?
No, actually my eating habits really did not change. I actually went through a transition of moving back to Houston, looking for a job, but prior to that, there was stress on my job, and I would still eat on the small portions, but I just wasn't as active. Actually, I just stopped being active altogether. So that had a whole lot to do with it. Yeah.
Okay. Now the question that I wanted to ask you was, as far as the people that go through the procedure and they lose the weight, I've actually seen people that have lost like way more weight than what they had intended, and actually became almost like anorexic in appearance. I've actually seen that. How is that fixed, or how does one balance that type of thing out?
You know, I can only give you my experience with that. I can tell you in the 17 years of doing bariatric surgery, we've probably had 2 or 3 people who I thought lost too much weight, and almost invariably it's due to their behavior. I'll give you a perfect example. A patient I saw in clinic today, she can eat a good, decent amount of food. The problem is she runs 15 miles every single day. And so she excessively, and I mean every day, 7 days a week, she's literally running a marathon a day. Well, it is very difficult with a smaller pouch. Even though she can eat a good quantity of food, somewhere around 2,500 calories, it's not enough to support that much activity. And that particular patient really just continues to see herself as being obese, even though she has a completely normal body mass index. But that's not the surgery causing her to lose the weight. It's things that she's doing in her behavior that's causing her to lose the weight.
Okay.
One thing people need to keep in mind is none of these surgeries are geared to make you lose 100% of your weight. Too many factors play a role in the weight we currently have. The volume of food and the amount of hunger you experience is a portion of it. There's other components and factors. Your age, your underlying health, medications you're on, hormonal changes as women go through menopause and as men get older. These are things that can, psychological factors. Obviously our eating habits play a role. But there's also even genetic factors. And what people seem to think when they get this surgery is that the surgery controls all those risk factors, and it doesn't.
Okay.
It controls a few of them, mainly how much you eat and the amount of hunger you experience. So we have to work post-operatively on some of these other issues. You know, psychological issues, health issues, obviously getting them more active again. So it's very uncommon, believe it or not, unless the surgery is not performed very well in the beginning, for patients to lose too much weight. It's almost unheard of in my practice for a patient to come in and say, "Doc, I've just lost too much weight, reverse my procedure." The more common procedure we're going to get is, "Doc, I haven't lost enough weight. What do I need to do to get more off?" Okay. So it is possible that losing too much weight can occur, But I rarely find that that's a technical issue. I usually find in most circumstances it's a psychological and an eating disorder that individual already has.
Okay. Now, before the procedure is actually done, isn't there some type of therapy that you have to go to or go through before you get to the place where you're actually able to have the surgery?
True. I mean, there are some exceptions. Usually with patients who are going to finance this, in order to save money, we don't necessarily put them through the same rigorous screening that an insurance might require. Most insurances are going to require some type of weight management program before getting that patient in the operating room, a psychological evaluation, and a thorough workup. And a lot of our patients who are going to go a cash route or a finance route, we usually forego those because they're cost expensive.
Okay.
It may be 6 months worth of nutrition that they can avoid, a psychological evaluation. Most of the time when we're looking at a patient with their first visit, we're looking at some red flags that come up.
Okay.
Are they on psychiatric meds? Do they have an eating disorder to begin with, bulimia, anorexia? Do they have some type of drug addiction, alcohol addiction? These are things that may be red flags in their response to after surgery and how they're going to respond to surgery and the follow-up.
Okay.
But there are some screening that we do just as an initial for all of our patients to make sure they're adequate candidates. We want to make sure they're healthy before they get into the operating room as much as possible.
Right.
So that we're reducing the potential risk that they're going to experience.
Okay. Therefore, creating a greater success.
Absolutely.
Once the
These are
surgery is
elective operations. There's no emergency. So you want that patient to be in good physical health, as best of physical health as possible. Obviously, we're dealing with a lot of people with diabetes, high blood pressure, other medical conditions, sleep apnea. So we try to optimize and get their sugar controlled, their blood pressure down prior to surgery. But there's no rush to the operating room. We want to make sure these people are mentally prepared for the changes that come after surgery, because it's a big change for any bariatric patient, changing their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think both of our guests here today have realized it's not just the surgery that's helped them be successful, it's what they've done in changing their lifestyle in addition to the surgery that's been successful.
So the surgery would be safe to say is a simple tool.
Absolutely.
To help you get
Best
where
way to approach
you
it. It's
want
a
to be.
tool.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes, yes. All right. I hope you guys are learning as much as I'm learning today. I'm getting a wealth of information about this particular procedure with Dr. St. Laurent and Miss Vanessa Dijon. We're going to be back with the second half of the show. You guys stick around where my guest will be, Carolyn Bates.
Sky Trues Custom Eyewear has taken the world by storm. In only 8 months, Sky Trues has gained the eyes of many, including celebs like Big Sean, Little Flip, Destiny's Child, Soulja Boy, just to name a few. Through custom design, Sky Trues can put your imagination on your frames. I bring to you the next big thing in Houston, Sky Trues, created by Golden Boy, the musician, the artist, the entrepreneur, and grassroots marketing genius. Be inspired. Sky Trues, custom designed frames. Sky Trues!
Welcome back to this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show. This is actually our second half of our segment about weight loss. Welcome back, Dr. St. Laurent. And my new guest, Carolyn Bates. Welcome, Carolyn. As you guys know, we're talking about weight loss, and everyone on the show today has been through a different type of procedure for weight loss. Now, Carolyn, your surgery of choice originally was
the band.
Okay, tell me a little bit about your experience with the band.
It was too much maintenance for me. I have a very active life, so you have to go back and get the feels. It was also I couldn't hold anything. I couldn't eat.
Okay.
Constantly come back up. And I don't know if it was whether I just didn't know how to eat, like taking the time
properly
to chew the food,
okay,
and eat the right things, but it was constantly coming back up, regurgitating. So it was just too much for me, and I decided a little after a year well, no, less than a year, to do something different with my doctor and I.
Okay, okay. You know, that's one of the common problems that I've heard about with various procedures, is that it tends, they have, I guess, reflux or whatever, where it tends to come back up, the foods that you eat and that type of thing. And also, from what I understand, it can actually destroy the lining of your esophagus when those types of things take place. After the surgery, I've known of people that have had it that told me that that was their problem, and that type of thing. So that was one of the side effects for you.
Correct.
And what was, were there any other side effects for you?
No, that was, mainly
That
it
was-
was just too much for me, because I could have gotten used to, eating right. I could have, because even with the, gastric now, I'm constantly having to, okay, not eat as fast, or watch what I eat. I can eat anything I wanna eat, I just can't eat too much of it.
Okay.
So you have to change some habits. I can't eat in a, you know, some people can eat in a rush, go take a 5-minute lunch break.
Right.
I can't
Not
do
you.
that.
Uh-huh.
No. So it just mainly was, it was too much maintenance for me.
Okay, okay.
For my lifestyle.
And so you opted to have the second procedure done. Like our earlier guest, Vanessa Dijon, she had also actually had the surgery done twice, a revision, and that type. So you've basically done the same thing, but in a different way. So you went from the band to the actual
Yeah.
gastric bypass. Is that a common thing for you to see in the practice?
Yes. Here and now, probably one of the most common procedures to either convert or reverse is going to be a gastric band. We probably do a couple a week. There's been hundreds of thousands of bands that have been placed across the nation, so there's a wealth of revisional surgery that's out there. So we will either convert a band either to a gastric sleeve or a gastric bypass, and we see much better success with the latter procedures.
Okay, okay.
There is a lot of maintenance with the band. It's a mechanical device, so you need to go and see your physician a lot more frequently to maintain appropriate restriction with the adjustments that are performed. I have my patients at least once a year come in and actually do what's called a barium swallow, so we can physically look at the band with an X-ray
Okay.
and see how contrast material is flowing through the band to make sure they're not too tight or too loose. So there's definitely a much higher maintenance program associated with bands for them to be successful compared to bypasses or sleeves. Those are more fixed procedures where we're actually using the patient's anatomy. We're not
Okay.
really putting a mechanical device in them. And as such, most of our bypass and sleeve patients have a broader range of food that they can eat and tend to have much less problems when it comes to eating. Our band patients, when they're well restricted, really have several foods that they just have difficulty with and have to avoid. Breads, pasta, rice can be very difficult. Chewy meats can be very difficult. So I find that after a band, most of those patients may alter or eliminate anywhere from 15 to 20% of what they might have eaten before.
Okay.
Bypasses and sleeves, that's generally not the case. There may be an occasional item like bread that they may not consume as much, but they tend to be able to eat a much broader range of food with a little bit more regularity and not have. The biggest problem with bands is they get stuff stuck in it. If the band's too tight and they don't chew something well enough, it gets stuck.
Really?
And so the only way that's coming up is probably one of two ways. You're going to
Throw it up.
throw it up, or you're going to have to go back to your surgeon and have some of the fluid removed so it will pass.
Mhm.
We don't generally find that to be a problem with bypasses and sleeves because there's really no mechanical device obstructing the flow. It's their own body.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit more compliance and a little bit of stretchability to your own anatomy. Whereas
Okay.
that's a fixed band. Once you put fluid in, it's not getting bigger. It's going to
Basically
stretch. It's going to
stays
stay
the way it is.
Right.
So how often would maintenance have to take place with this type of procedure?
Generally with the band during the first year, in my practice, we're going to see these patients about every 4 to 6 weeks. So
Really?
It's about 11, 12 visits during the first year.
Wow.
Whereas with my bypasses and sleeves, we only see every 3 months. Well, you got to understand, as a patient's losing weight with the band, we have to adjust it to maintain the same level of restriction.
Okay.
The band's kind of like the belt around your waist. So as you lose weight, you need to tighten your belt, right?
Gotcha.
Well, the band's kind of the same way. As you lose weight, the stomach will shrink and decrease in size. Some of the fat will go away. So you have to add a little bit of fluid to maintain the same level of restriction. Now, we're not adjusting them every month, but we want to follow them real closely to make sure that they're not developing bad eating habits.
Okay.
You'll see a lot of bands, because it's hard for them to eat solid foods, will start gravitating towards softer foods. Milkshakes, potato chips, softer Cheetos,
Okay.
mashed potatoes. they're not focusing on protein and solid
Which are really
foods.
not good for you anyway,
They're
right?
not good for you. I mean, you can find some soft foods that are good for you, but as a general rule, if you're going to eat softer foods, then you're defeating the purpose of the ban, which is to restrict the volume of food you can eat. Now you're eating soft, that you can consume a lot more of it. So we see more patients with bans develop maladaptive eating behavior. And then you start getting into this yo-yo effect. You're adding fluid, removing fluid, and eventually the patient just gets discouraged. They're not losing good weight. And at that point, a lot of times they just kind of throw up their hands and say, you know, this is just too much maintenance. I need something that's going to give me a little bit more guaranteed restriction.
Which would then be the gastric?
Well, either a gastric bypass or a gastric sleeve. So both of those procedures, in most circumstances, the patient will be a pretty good candidate.
Gotcha.
Again, it depends on the individual's underlying medical conditions, what kind of weight we're trying to get them to lose. Not everybody's going to be a bypass candidate. Not everybody's going to be a sleeve candidate. So we have to look at that individual and determine what's going to be the best operation for them.
Gotcha. Now, and for you, you said you originally had the band, and then you went to the gastric. So what type of difference have you seen between the two?
For one, less maintenance, and for two, like he said, the food gets stuck and you just become uncomfortable. So now I can eat what I want to eat. Like I said, I just can't eat as much of it, you know. I have to eat a small portion of it. But that was mainly it.
And so how much weight have you actually lost? Where did you start and where are you now?
286 was where I was at the day of my surgery.
Okay.
And now I'm at 160.
Wow. Now, I'm not smart enough to do the math that quickly, so I'm going to ask you to tell me exactly how much.
It's over 120 pounds.
Over 120 pounds. Wow. So do you feel like a new person?
I do. As the initial reason that I had the surgery was my husband had a stroke prior to me having the surgery. He had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and then I got thinking about my mom had it, my aunt had it, and I was borderline. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, and unable to walk up a flight of stairs, unable to walk in the grocery store without having to stop and lean over the grocery basket to get my breath.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be active, but I couldn't be active because I was just too overweight. And so after doing research, speaking to other people, and praying about it, I decided to have the surgery. I had lost some weight on my own, but got to a plateau where I just wasn't losing it anymore.
Okay. And so then you just went ahead and took that next step. We're going to continue to talk about you going to that next step and losing all the weight that you lost. In just a moment, when we return up more, let's talk about it. The Ferrell Phelps Show. We'll see you guys back in just a moment.
Sky Trues Custom Eyewear has taken the world by storm. In only 8 months, Sky Trues has gained the eyes of many, including celebs like Big Sean, Little Flip, Destiny's Child, Soulja Boy, just to name a few. Through custom design, Sky Trues can put your imagination on your frames. I bring to you the next big thing in Houston, Sky Trues, created by Golden Boy, the musician, the artist, the entrepreneur, and grassroots marketing genius. Be inspired. Sky Trues, custom designed frames. Sky Trues.
All right, welcome back to the Ferrell Phelps Show, where my guest today is Dr. St. Laurent and Carolyn Bates. Welcome back, guys. As you know, if you're watching the show, we're talking about weight loss and various weight loss procedures with our guest and our medical professional, Dr. St. Laurent. Thank you guys, first of all, for such wonderful information. I know that the audience is being blessed because you are sharing your heart and you're being real with us and very transparent, so I appreciate that. I wanted to ask you, how did your family feel about you losing the weight? Were you treated differently? Did the world see you differently? What kind of reception did you have? Those types of things.
It was a mixture. Most of my family, my immediate family, was supportive. And then there's some that weren't so supportive. Constantly, oh, you lost too much weight, you look sick, but I didn't let it bother me.
Okay. You know what?
I was happy with it.
You have such a soft voice. I'm gonna have to ask you to speak up a little bit louder.
Okay.
I'm sitting there with her, but I'm like, okay, what is she saying?
I'm sorry.
But you were talking. Okay, what I was asking was about your reception when it comes to people and how they saw you. You said your family.
Most of my family was very supportive.
Okay.
But there was some that were not as supportive. There were some that were negative. You know, you've lost too much weight. There was nothing wrong with you, et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't do it for them. I did it for me. So I didn't let that bother me.
And you know what? I think that's what's important too. Is that when you make a decision like this, a life-changing decision, that you make the decision for yourself. Not based on the thoughts of others or what you think others want you to do. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you got to face the mirror with only yourself. So it's so good that you have that good, healthy attitude toward it. I wanted to talk too, because I've noticed a lot of times when people lose an excessive amount of weight, the skin, there's another issue that presents itself, and a lot of times it's excess skin after the weight is lost. How is that rectified? Is there another surgery that's needed after that in order to correct that as well? How does that work?
That's a very common question we get. You know, a lot of it depends on the amount of weight a patient winds up losing.
Okay.
You know, individuals who only lose 30, 40 pounds, a lot of times they don't need reconstructive surgery to get rid of the loose skin. Most patients who've lost over 100 pounds do have some droopy, loose skin that they may desire to have removed. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. There's no absolute reason to have it removed unless there's a medical condition, like they're getting chronic infections or difficulty with walking or rashes. But in those individuals who decide to reduce or get rid of the excess skin, it does require a separate surgery, usually a few years down the line once you've stabilized your weight.
Okay.
And generally we're going to refer that off to a plastic surgeon who specializes in weight loss patients so that they can do either what's called a paniculectomy or a tummy tuck. Sometimes they're doing modified body lifts.
Okay.
There's other areas where they may augment the breast or lift the breast because of the drooping that develops. They may also, another popular area is to get the back of the arms done.
Right.
And even the hips and thighs sometimes can be reduced because of the excess skin that's on them. So that's just something that we decide on later down the road when a patient's lost the majority of their weight. And once they've reached a stable weight for a good 4 to 6 months, at that point, if they desire to have some of the excess skin removed, then we refer them to the appropriate specialist and get them a consultation to have that done.
Okay, okay. So once you get past that point, then it's to another physician.
Correct.
Someone to do corrective surgery. We have another question, I think, from an audience member. What was your question?
Is the sleeve more beneficial than the band?
Are you asking that from a medical or from a patient standpoint?
Both.
Well,
The question was, is a sleeve more beneficial than the band? Is that right?
Right.
Okay, for those of you that may not have been able to hear that.
I mean, both procedures have pros and cons. When you look at the band, it is a less invasive procedure, a safer procedure. So in certain patients, you might want to do a safer procedure that's quicker. In my own opinion, for patients who are trying to get rid of several medical conditions and have a lot of weight to lose, most of our research shows that the more fixed procedures like the bypass or the sleeve, those patients are going to lose a higher percentage of weight and, again, less maintenance involved with it. They're just better procedures overall because they're not just relying simply on restriction. When you look at the band, it's a 100% pure restriction. When you look at the bypass, we combine a little bit of malabsorption, and when you look at the sleeve, we're adding a hormonal change to help control hunger a little bit better. So by providing kind of a dual mechanism of action, we see better weight loss with our sleeves and our bypasses. Plus, again, they're fixed procedures, so it's not something that we have to adjust, and that provides a little bit more permanence to the patient. The band is a adjustable procedure, so you really have to rely on that patient being motivated to come back and see us. Because if they're not coming back to see us to get those adjustments as they're losing weight, then most of the time they're not going to be successful long term, and they'll eventually lead to weight regain. So from a medical standpoint, we do lean a little bit more towards bypasses and sleeves than bands, but in certain situations, bands are still appropriate.
There it is. All right. I want to ask you a question too. Now, how has life changed for you since the weight loss?
I'm more active. And not that I was depressed or anything like that, but I'm more
More social?
social,
Maybe.
upbeat. You know, I like Vanessa said, I never had any self-esteem issues. But you know, you do get into when you can't do the activities that other people are doing.
Right.
And you just have to sit on the sidelines, or you can't do things with your children. It does put you in a depressed state. And so now that I can get back to all the activities that I were, when I was younger.
Right.
Now that I can do those, I feel a whole lot better.
Yeah, a lot more lively, a lot more vibrant.
Correct.
I had an opportunity to see your pictures, your before and after pictures, and my jaw dropped when I saw it was just a tremendous difference. And I think one of the pictures that stood out in my mind was a workout outfit that you were wearing.
Correct. That was I had surgery on a Friday, and that was the picture that I took the next Friday. I just got out of the hospital.
Really?
In which workout fit?
It was like you had lost the weight. I mean, it was a green shirt and black pants.
Okay.
Yeah, spandex. Yeah, and everything. I said, okay, she's showing out. She lost a little weight. She's showing out. And you know what? What was ironic is that as I went through the different pictures of the guests that were going to be on the show today, and they sent in the pictures, Charlotte, that was on the show earlier, had on the same outfit.
You go, girl.
I'm like, okay, is aqua and black the thing, you know? But you know, it's interesting how we behave or how we dress or carry ourselves when we feel a certain way. And when our self-esteem is in a certain place, our self-esteem is intact, we'll wear things that we would not have worn when we weren't feeling that.
Some of us.
Some of us, yeah. And you are correct. You are correct. We're not going there today, but all right. I hope you guys are enjoying this edition of the Ferrell Phelps Show as much as I am. We're going to be back in just a moment with more. Stick around.
Sky Trues Custom Eyewear has taken the world by storm. In only 8 months, Sky Trues has gained the eyes of many, including celebs like Big Sean, Little Flip, Destiny Child, Soulja Boy, just to name a few. Through custom design, Sky Trues can put your imagination on your frames. I bring to you the next big thing in Houston, Sky Trues, created by Golden Boy, the musician, the artist, the entrepreneur, and grassroots marketing genius. Be inspired. Sky Trues, custom designed frames. Sky Trues!
Ferrell Phelps Show, where my guest today is Dr. St. Laurent and Sonia Hernandez, who is a bariatric nurse. All right. Thank you guys for coming, taking time on your schedules, this, that, and the other. I know it was not always, easy to just change your day up like this. Now, from your perspective as a bariatric nurse, what are some of the things that you've seen with patients that have been troublesome?
Well, first of all, I did have the gastric sleeve, the gastric procedure. What I've seen, because I counsel patients prior to having their procedure, we've seen a lot of confidence issues. They, they don't want to tell a lot of their family members about the procedure.
Okay.
Just different. It varies. It varies.
Okay. Well, why would someone not want to tell?
And they're embarrassed.
Okay.
embarrassed about what others are going to think about them.
Okay.
Maybe if they fail at it, they might think if they fail, what will my family think? What will my friends think? My coworkers, what will they think?
Okay.
So
they end up doing the procedure in more or less secrecy.
And I've seen patients, just to touch on that, because, I mean, that can be part of it. One of the other guests brought up, it's very important. Some people perceive this as the easy way out, and it's not.
Oh, okay.
It is work. And so people don't like that negativity that I'm only doing this because I don't want to work at it.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's just not the case. I think it takes a lot of motivation, a lot of guts to move forward. These are big surgeries and require a big lifestyle change. And so it's not, no one really wants to have the negativity, but no one wants to be seen as a cheater and I'm taking the easy way out.
Right.
And it's not. These people work very hard to lose the weight and be successful, and they should be proud of that factor. I see that as a common reason too.
I see,
Okay.
like Dr. St. Laurent said earlier, this is a tool, and if you don't watch it, if you don't exercise and eat right after the procedure, you can gain your weight back. So you have to be accountable to yourself.
Right.
And it's a tool.
Right. Now, you having had the surgery yourself, I'm sure you can relate to a lot of the people that come through, which is always good when there's somebody that you can relate to, somebody that can understand what you're going through, and you being that person. What for you was your biggest hurdle?
I wanted to make sure that I held myself accountable. I knew what I needed to do. Having the surgery allowed me to eat less food, but I knew down the line I could gain it back, so I needed to exercise. I run. I do the stairs every day. I park farther at the grocery store. There's little things that you can do and that I do, and that's why I'm still successful. And I share that with the patients. These are little things you can do.
Yeah. You know, in doing my research, I ran across a video of a lady who talked about the surgery, and she talked about one of the disadvantages as she saw it, was that she had to continually exercise. And she's like, I exercise 4 or 5 times a week, and it's just not who I am. But this is a part of what she saw as the downside. But I see it as a part of your maintenance.
Yes.
You know, so I think it's all about how you look at it. And that's what's important, how you look at it. That makes all the difference in how you look at it. And I look at you, and you look like someone that's very fit to me. I looked at you when you first came and sat down. I'm like, okay, she must work out or something. And so the workouts for you is a part of your regular.
Yes. You just fit it in, and you know, either in the evening or in the morning, and you just do it. It's part of your routine.
Part of your daily lifestyle.
Yes.
And that's what this thing is really about, your lifestyle change, because that's what takes place when you get the procedure done. A lot of time your lifestyle has to change, from your eating habits, from the things that you allow around you, because you have temptations, I'm certain, you know, and I'm certain that a lot of your cravings don't necessarily go away when you have the surgery.
Your cravings do change, though.
They do change?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're more, what I always tell my patients, don't ever say I could never have that again.
Okay.
You can say, I'm going to, if I need it, I'll have just a little bit of it. You
Okay.
can taste it, but not eat the whole cinnamon roll.
Okay.
If you want that little bite, you know, because that's holding yourself back, and that's going to make you want it more. So you can have a little bit, just you won't eat as much as you normally would.
So I guess it'd be safe to say portion control would be the key
Yes.
when it's things that you actually desire.
Because there's still going to be barbecues, there's still going to be birthday parties, your life is
will
going to
continue
go
to-
on, but
yeah.
you just need to know, I'm not going to eat that big piece of cake.
Yeah.
I'll eat a piece of cake.
All right.
And surgeries are geared more towards reducing the amount of food you eat. It's not set in stone that what you eat changes.
Okay.
I tell my patients that all the time. My surgery will help control the volume or amount of food you're able to eat on a plate, but it's not necessarily going to change the type of food you eat. So if you want a candy bar, you want a milkshake, certainly you won't be able to eat or drink as much, but you can still eat those items. And that's why it's important. You got to watch what you're eating, because surgery doesn't necessarily control that in most instances. Now, with some of our procedures, especially band patients, they'll find certain foods that they do have to eliminate. But most of our bypass and sleeve patients can eat a very broad range of food. They can enjoy Mexican food and Italian food and Chinese food. They can enjoy all those kind of foods. They can have a milkshake every once in a while. They're not going to be able to eat a lot of it.
Okay.
So we really teach our patients, it's not about making some dramatic diet work for you. It's a matter of learning how to eat the right way with your tool. I tell my patients, it's okay once or twice a week to have a cheat meal. Eat what you want. This is Houston. We love Mexican food and margaritas. And people are going to do that. I think the more you try to deprive a patient, then probably the stronger their cravings and the desire to have that food. And so you really, our goal with patients is to tell them, look, what we're doing is not a lifelong diet. It's a lifestyle change. We're giving you a tool, we're giving you education, we're going to try to make those lifestyle changes, but we still expect you to cheat every once in a while.
Okay.
Nobody in here has a perfect diet, do you?
Right. I wish I did.
And you can maintain excellent weight loss and still, occasionally have good food that you enjoy.
Gotcha.
So,
I want to talk about also the flip side of the weight loss, because a lot of times people change, or the people that they're around change toward them, and specifically relationships. And I've heard of cases where husbands and wives have actually divorced after this surgery has taken place. Have you actually experienced that or seen that with your patients that you have to consult?
I've seen that. I've seen patients, if the wife may have the surgery and the husband wasn't as supportive, yes, there have been divorces that have occurred because of that.
It happens.
People look at you in a different light because you have more confidence. You radiate. You're displaying more. You're exercising more. You're doing. You're buying more clothes. You're just different. You're a different person, and people sometimes don't take that. They just don't understand.
Okay. Now, tell me this. We've been talking about a lot of females that have actually had this type of surgery done. Do you get very many males that come through?
Yes, we have lots of males. Our male patients do wonderful. We do educate them. All of our patients that come through our program, we educate them before surgery so they know what they're getting into, what to expect. It's so important to know what to expect, the surgery process. That's why, I think that's why our program at our hospital is so different, because we're giving them individualized care, and I feel very just
Fortunately,
blessed to have the job that I have. I get to teach the patients as a nurse and as a patient. I just have a great job.
Yeah, which makes you a very well-rounded person. And so you fit into that environment perfectly, needless to say. And like I said a moment ago, it's always good to have somebody that you can relate to, that have had the same experience that you've had, to help you along your journey.
Yes.
Tell me this, is it a lot easier for men than it is for women? Is the success ratio a lot different?
I know men will lose weight faster than women.
Okay.
And Dr. St. Laurent can go into that a little bit deeper. But as far as and it always helps with the support you have with your family, support groups, that's imperative. But men do lose weight faster, would you say?
yes. As a general, males will lose weight a little bit quicker for a couple of reasons. One, we have higher testosterone levels, which are very important in losing weight and maintaining muscle mass. And then on top of that, males technically have more muscle than females. And those are kind of our body's engine. So they give us, the more muscle you have, the higher the metabolic rate, the quicker you're going to burn calories. So generally, they can still achieve the same endpoints, but generally if a male is motivated, he'll tend to see a little bit quicker weight loss than his spouse if she had the surgery or some other female. But again, that shouldn't take away from women. They can be extremely successful. It doesn't mean they can't lose as much weight as a male. It just means it may be a smooch slower. So don't get depressed if you're seeing somebody in a support group and it's going just a little bit slower than the male. Unfortunately, genetics sometimes dictates that.
Yeah, I understand that. I want to ask you, Sonia, what would you say to someone who's considering the surgery?
Do your research. Come to a weight loss seminar to get the information, to meet your physician. It's so important to have a good physician that you trust, that you're behind. We have one coming up on the first Tuesday of the month in August. It's Dr. St. Laurent at North Cypress Medical Center, and you can come meet the doctor, get all the information that you need, whether it be the band, the bypass, or the sleeve. Get the information that you need, and you, as a patient and the physician, you would make that decision together.
Okay. Fantastic. Now, I want to ask you, is there any last words that you'd like to say to anybody about this particular procedure? Information you'd like to share?
Well, really, I just want to comment and add to what Mr. Hernandez said, I think it's so critical that patients do the research when it comes to what physician. You know, there's a lot of physicians who advertise, and a lot of us just jump on that and go to the first thing we see. You know, it's like anything else. You got to develop a relationship long-term with this physician. You got to plan on keeping him in your life the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure he has a good bedside manner, and you can communicate with him, that he, you know, understands your particular situation. And so I agree with that. You've really got to research your physician. Look at the program he has to offer. Is he experienced enough? Does he have a good aftercare program? Does he have a good team supporting him? Is there a good hospital, that he goes to? So I think you got to look at all those aspects. I mean, I think most patients understand you don't necessarily want to go to the bariatric surgeon who's only done, you know, 25 of these cases, but you don't necessarily need to go to the surgeon who's done 10,000 of them. There's excellent surgeons in Houston, a lot of good qualified surgeons. But what I like to say is, for every good plumber, there's a bad plumber. So if you don't do your research, you can wind up with a doctor you're not happy with. And like I said, it's a lifelong commitment with that doctor. Look at the program, look at the experience, and I think eventually you'll come to it. And you don't have to just see one physician. You can go see multiple physicians, go to their support groups, go to their seminar, and see which one really gives you the warm and fuzzies. I tell patients who come to my seminar, hey, you know, if you really like what I have to say, go to another seminar and see what they have to say. Make sure you agree, and you know, we get along well. And if that's the case, great. I encourage my patients to go to other support group meetings or seminars, because I think you can only really make a knowledgeable decision if you've got options and choices.
Right.
Again, there's many good bariatric surgeons in Houston.
And so often I think people will make a decision really quick without doing the research.
Exactly.
And end up going to a practitioner or doctor to do the surgery, and it ends up being a bad surgery. I think that type of thing can take place. Real quick, I wanted to mention this. A couple of years back, I had a client that wanted to have the surgery done. She was a full-figured model, and she wanted to lose weight. But the doctor had advised her not to do the particular surgery that she wanted to do, and she still insisted on doing the surgery. I think she had the type of blood that tended to clot or whatever, and so the doctor said, you know, this is a risk. And of course, she had to sign off on things before the procedure was done. She had the procedure done, and about a week later was sitting up in the chair watching television and had a massive heart attack and passed away from the blood clot that ended up forming. I think sometimes people can get so desperate that they'll actually risk their lives to try to have a life. And that's what took place with her. And I also had a relative who wanted the surgery done as well. And this was some years back, and I'm sure technology has advanced things so much further now. And she wanted to have life so that she could play with her little boy, her son. That was her goal, to be small and be able to get around and take care of the little boy. And I think she might have weighed for like 350, 400 or something like that. And so she had the surgery, and she also passed away as well. But it's important that people have the right information so that they can make the right choice and the best choice for themselves. And research is the key. You have to do your research. Don't be lazy about your life. You have to do the research. Now, we have an audience member, I believe, that has a question, and that question would be?
My question is, what do you say to the audience when you have a patient that breaks all the rules? They went into your procedure, they were educated, they were 350 pounds, went down to 170, you see them 8 months later and they have 500 pounds.
Those are difficult.
I can't answer that question.
Well, you know, again, I think the success that a patient experiences post-op are very individualized. You certainly have those patients who are extremely motivated, like everybody here today, and do extremely well. You know, and if I could bottle up all these people and sell them, I'd be, you know, everybody would be successful. But you get those patients who, you know, they're going into it for the wrong reasons, or they didn't do the research, or they're expecting weight to come off real quick, not knowing what they need to do to get that weight to come off. And those are people whose, you know, their expectations were wrong going into that procedure. You know, occasionally we come across those patients. I think we've avoided a lot of those by a lot of pre-screening, making sure they understand risk, complications, what it's going to involve. But we still occasionally get them. You know, I'm not going to lie to you. I just like a patient expects me to perform a good job, I expect my patients to be compliant and follow up. I can honestly say to this day, I've never fired a patient, but I've certainly warned a couple patients that if they didn't start changing what they were doing, it was kind of pointless to continue to come back to me. And believe it or not, they made some changes and started seeing some modest improvement, and they stayed on track and stayed in the program. But you have to deal with those patients head on. I think I'm a very honest and upfront doctor, but I'm not afraid to tell you you're doing something wrong. And I'm certainly not afraid if a patient just is not going to be compliant and he's going to be detrimental. Unfortunately, sometimes we'll let a patient go if we absolutely have to.
And that's a part of you being a great doctor and doing your job, because your name is at stake with everybody that comes through that door. That's very important. I want to ask you another question before we wrap up. How did your life change after the surgery?
Oh, improved. Gosh, my confidence. I'm better. I think I'm better at everything that I do. I'm a better mom because I'll get in that sandbox and play with those kids, or I'll go to SeaWorld and sweat all day long. I'm more apt to doing that. I'm back in school. I am just better. I'm good for my patients. I'm just more confident.
Yeah. And now the amount of weight that you lost from your surgery again was?
85.
85 pounds. Mm-hmm. That's like a whole other person when you think about it. Yeah. That's great. That's great. Now, is there any information that you would like the audience to know about you and how they can get in touch with you?
Certainly you can go to our website, drstlaurent.com. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Believe it or not, I answer all my emails, so you can actually email me from my website or directly contact our office. There's a wealth of information on our website about all the different procedures. If you want to sign up for a seminar, I always encourage a patient, come to a seminar. You get to meet me, you get to talk with me, you get to meet some of my staff, and then you learn about these procedures in a very relaxed, comfortable environment. And I think that's kind of the first step, making that first step to go learn a little bit more about the different procedures and getting to know your surgeon. And a lot of the surgeons who do bariatric surgery in Houston have websites, so you can do a lot of research on all the websites. And that's where I usually encourage my patients. So that's a great way to look me up and who I'm about. We do have a Facebook page and a Twitter page. You can go to that off of our actual homepage on drstlaurent.com, and that's
there it is.
Get a hold of me.
And he actually does answer his emails because he responded to mine. Thank you. I hope you guys have enjoyed this edition of Let's Talk About It, the Ferrell Phelps Show. I keep making that mistake, folks, because we're transitioning from the Ferrell Phelps Show and all. Anyway, it's crazy. But thank you so much for joining on this edition. To find out more about the show, you can certainly reach us at Let's Talk About It 12TV at gmail.com. That's Let's Talk About It 12TV at gmail.com. You can also go to our YouTube channel. Simply go to the YouTube channel, type in the name Ferrell Phelps, and you will see all of our shows right there on YouTube. All right, until next time, we'll see you then.